What's up, everybody? Welcome to another live Facebook, YouTube series. We are gonna have be joined by Kyle Konkiel here in just a little bit. He's running a little bit up. There he is. He is not behind. Look at that motherfucker. He is not behind.
Hey, man.
How you doing, man? Switch up this this awesome banner. There we go. So how you doing, man?
Oh, not too shabby, man. How are you?
Doing good. I feel like I need to get back on the like chiropractor thing, like you've been doing the last couple of days.
Well, that was forced. That really wasn't. That really wasn't by choice.
Well, you know, potato.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny because I had to explain to my parents today because my wife went back for the first time in probably about a month or so. We neither of us have gone, and my parents are just like, "How do you feel that works?" And I was like, "I feel it works pretty well. I feel usually really fucking good when I leave."
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends, like what you're going for. Like, I went to actual doctors, and I went to and they just like, yeah, you can go to the chiropractor. It's fine. You know, with my MRI, because for people who are listening who don't know, like I pulled my back a couple of weeks ago, and luckily it wasn't too damaging, and a lot of the stuff is reversible. It's just me not really taking care of my body the way I should have, and lifting stuff in a manner I shouldn't have, and so.
What, you mean to tell me musicians actually? I feel like Bad Wolves dudes just got bad backs. Like I know Doc, Doc had the herniated disc or whatever.
Yeah, he's got a couple bulges in his back, and I think because Doc's like 6'2".
Yeah.
And I think just spending years traveling in a bunk, like, dudes like Joel and Adam D from Killswitch, like those guys have like legendary bad backs. Those guys are like 6'5" and 6'6", but
yeah,
when you're that tall and you're in a bunk, it's just not conducive to a healthy back.
That's why you guys got to get on that level where you can each get your own bus and get that giant fucking like king size bed in the back lounge area.
Yeah, the star coaches. I actually did have a star coach with one of my last bands, and it was only the only reason why we got the star coach was because it was the only bus that was available. But my old drummer at the time, he just slept in the back lounge anyway. So, but it just, when you have a star coach, there's like basically a 1-bedroom and your own like bathroom that like separates from bunk alley, bathroom, and then like the little back bedroom area. But what that does is it makes the front lounge of the bus significantly smaller.
What I always think is funny is the few times I've had to do, or not had to, but got to do some of the interviews on the buses, is when people are like, "Oh, is it so nice? What's it like?" And I'm like, "It's like being in a tiny studio apartment on wheels."
Yeah.
Like everyone's backpacks and shit, and everyone's like crawling all over each other.
Well, and depending on how many people are on the bus too, like there was one point where I think we had like, I think Doc's girlfriend was out, Tommy's girlfriend at the time was out, John's girlfriend was out, and we had like a full crew. So we had our tour manager, front of house guy, Robbie. We had our lighting guy at the time, Neil. We had a monitor guy, Squid, and we also had Josh D. Adams out doing social media. So, and plus our regular 2 techs, Johnny and Tim. So there was like 16 people or something, 15 people on the bus at once.
Here's a fun thing that I haven't really talked a whole lot about on this show, but I was kind of reminded of in the episode you did with I'm totally blanking on his name, Ash from X3 Inches of Blood.
Oh yeah, Ash Pearson, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys were talking about some of the nicknames and so forth. What are some of the more fun nicknames that you've encountered through some of the touring you've done?
Well, a lot of the old school guys, they all have like nicknames. Like the drum tech for Five Finger Death Punch, his name is Michael, but he goes by Micro. But there's guys that I've met doing production work at in LA, like John Mayer's guy, like his name is Chris, but everyone calls him Feely. Now he won't tell anybody his story. And then you have like the more generic ones, which like, I have another buddy who worked for Kiss for a long time. His nickname is Spike, but I feel like a lot of the older school dudes have more of like the roadie nicknames. And then like we kind of just come up with, random nicknames for each other, like in the band. Like I have so many nicknames for Doc. I think Doc is the one I have the most nicknames for. I call him Doctor, or sometimes I'll call him Shirt Cocking at Coil. It's kind of like an inside joke. And then or I'll call him Proctor, because the brand Procter and Gamble, because it rhymes with doctor. And I've and of course I've got a billion nicknames too, all kind of correlating with my last name, like Conk, Konky, Big Conk, and then I have my random one, which is Mr. Brennard. And he like has like a personality too. He's the 7th grade substitute social studies teacher. and the boys came up with this elaborate story that he got fired for being a substitute teacher because he took the children on a field trip to go swimming, and someone pooped in the pool, and they test the poo, and it was actually him that pooed in the pool.
So, 2 things to that. I'm kind of surprised no one has called you Piggy.
Piggy?
Yeah, so it's like, because I was thinking it's a little bit of a stretch, but I figured with some of the nicknames that people get, it would maybe fit. But like, because you were saying conch, and I always think of like the conch, but people always mispronounce it because CHs, I guess, give people issues.
Yeah.
But Lord of the Flies.
Oh yeah.
I got the conch, and then he fucking gets hit in the head with a rock and dies.
Yeah.
Actually, so I know you've toured here in Michigan and in the Midwest. I know you probably are at least casually aware of Meijer, like the Walmart of the Midwest here.
Yeah, so I used to live in Seattle, and in Seattle they have Fred Meyer.
Yeah,
they've got Fred Meyer, so I know it's pretty similar.
Yeah, pretty much. Apparently, the news story going around in the last 2 days is that some dude shit in a box and put it back on the shelf at the Meijer.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that.
So now people are trying to figure out like who did it.
Who done it? Who pooed in the Fred Meyer?
Yeah, that was the trip. Going out there and realizing that you can't pump your own gas.
Oh well, that's in Oregon. Seattle.
Yeah,
Seattle. You can pump your own gas. But yeah, that was really weird. Unless you have a truck.
Is that the rule or the trick?
Because if you're getting diesel and you're in a larger vehicle than, if you have like more than 4 wheels, you have to go around to the truck, and they don't pump your gas there, your fuel there. But yeah, that was really weird. And they're just like, oh, how much do you want? I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, no, I'm gonna pump it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Same with liquor laws in the traveling I've done around the different states. Like South Carolina was a fucking trip, because like you would go and they'd have it separated by beer and liquor. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't buy them together. You had to go separate locations and buy them. And I was like, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah, I think that's how it was in Des Moines too. Don't quote me on that, but for all the time I spent out in Des Moines, I'm pretty sure everything was like if you wanted to get your regular groceries, like you can get wine with the regular groceries, but then you had to go to like after you were done. Yeah, you had to go get your beer and liquor from that part of the store. Like it was 2 separate transactions.
Yeah, it's really weird. And then obviously like Chicago bars are open until 4. Like just
that's
the different rules and shit. You're just like, all right, like we constantly, my wife and I, make the joke that it's like people who come at least to here in Grand Rapids probably flip the fuck out when they get a shot, because you go to some places and a shot's like a fucking thimble, like so tiny, and you're like, what is this? Like $7, what am I getting with that? And then you come here and it comes like in a rocks glass all full, and we're probably like, people probably come to Michigan and they're like, I'm gonna die.
It's actually super similar in the UK. When you order a shot, it's very minuscule, and a lot of bars in England, they don't stay open past like 11. There's a few that Doc and I have been to, but for the most part they close at about 11, or I think the latest like midnight. But yeah, actually, one of our favorite bars that was in London, Crowbar, actually just had to close their doors because of COVID-19.
Yeah,
And that was a bar that was open, I think, until 3 a.m. I mean, we were there pretty late. So,
I mean, I guess after a certain point, nothing good can come from being at a bar past probably 12.
yeah, I mean, you know, it's just. But like for us, we like to have we like to have a dry bus. So it's just, you know, if we're stuck somewhere until like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and you know, sometimes we play really late, you know, sometimes we won't get off stage until like 11 or so, and we want to chill out, calm down, and then it's just like, oh, nothing is open here past 11, so sick.
Well, I guess
it's not so much like wanting to party, it's just kind of something
to do. Yeah. Speaking of something to do, you know, I didn't want to talk to you too much about it the other day when we were going back and forth in the DMs about it, but holy shit, Mario Cop. I was wondering what the fuck that is, because like I'm a huge Turbo Negro fan, and like I've thankfully gotten to see them a couple of times, and it was one of those things like you know, something we kind of talk about on the podcast quite a bit is, you know, like some of the fun of getting to interview some of the people we have that like were broken up before the internet really became what it is, or podcasts became what they are, is that there was an era where you just couldn't look shit up. You had nothing to find unless you just knew someone who knew something about whatever it is. And that definitely was one of those things where it was on the record, but I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, so basically, nobody really knows what it is. It's
which is so weird in this day and age that like there still is equally as little information about it as there is.
Yeah, and what Ash was really getting into on the podcast that I did with him was that this could have just been like a role-playing audio tape, like just for like funsies. There might not even be like a video of it, which I don't really want to see the video, but I would really like to just at least see what Sgt.
Like.
Yeah, what Sgt. Russo looks like. And I mean, like I said, this has been passed down from, I heard it from my old guitar player Jed Simon, and because he was just quoting it, I'm like, dude, where the fuck do you come up with this shit? And he's like, oh, it's Mario the Cop. And I'm like, what the fuck is Mario the Cop? And one day he's like, he had copied it to, because he only had it on like disc, like floppy disk or some shit, or like DAT. It might have been DAT. And he's like, oh, I finally uploaded it to MP3. And so he turned it on, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. And then he had sent it to Ash, and me and Ash would like kind of text back and forth every now and again about some stuff. Like I sent him, there was an ad on Facebook today from like 1-800-HalloweenCostumes.com or some shit. And it was like it looked like a cop from like the Village People. So I like screenshot it, and I said, here's your photo of Mario the Cop. And we kind of had a back and forth about it. But I know that Jed got it from Reese Fulber. Reese Fulber got it from, I want to say the Turbo Negro dudes, but I'm not sure. And then nobody really knows where it came from before that. I'm not exactly sure where Turbo Negro got it from, but the legend of the Mario the Cop audio is basically that it was like found in the middle of the street in San Francisco somewhere, like
almost
discarded.
Like the demo tape for from Chaz from Airheads.
Yeah, from Airheads. Yeah, the Lone Rangers demo that fucking got pissed on by a dog, and then they had to go find it in the middle of the street. Yeah.
Oh man, it was just one of those things. Like I don't know. It, like as you guys were talking about it, just reminded me of some of like those things that I think are like at times when you listen to it, it's not so much that it in and of itself is so great, but the history it has with like friends. Like, you know, I don't know if you've seen the movie Haggard.
Oh yeah, that's actually something that Ash and I were going to talk about, and I totally forgot about because he's super into that movie, and I mean I've seen it a million times. People don't know who it is. It was like around the time of the CKY videos, and it was like a movie that Bam Margera produced, and there's like a bunch of fucking Brandon DiCamillo like fucking diamond bicycles and the fucking I forget what was that? It was like a microwave or
a reverse microwave.
Yeah, the reverse microwave.
Yeah. So, but what's funny is like in the last like probably 2 months, Andrew from the Ghost Inside have been like texting and face like the voice memo things you can do.
Oh yeah,
just quoting that fucking movie. Yeah. Like, you know, I have to lay like this because otherwise, you know, I'd get taco neck.
yeah.
But it's like the movie is not great. Like it's only funny because of how quotable it is to like those who have seen it.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes like this thing where if you show it to someone who's never seen it, they're like, this is what you've been going on about for 10 years. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. I guess either you just had to be there or it was like encapsulates a certain era of like a friendship or something.
Well, like one of the funniest things about that is that like they changed the name of like the antagonist like shitty girlfriend like by just adding a G, like because her real name was Lauren. Like Lauren, Ryan Dunn's real girlfriend who did all that shit, her name was Lauren, and they changed it to Glorin.
You know, I'm a Leo, so I like rhinos.
Yeah. There's a party with a lot of hot dudes and tight pants.
I knew she always wanted more dick or bigger or something. But no, it was a thing though. Like as you guys were talking about it, I was just like, and you know, obviously with Turbo Negro being kind of in that CKY, you know, sphere, that was kind of, you know, just kind of really hitting that sweet spot of like those kind of things that you guys were talking about. And it was just like, fuck, like, I'm at least glad I now know. And, you know, I didn't even know that Poison Idea had used a sample of it either. So, I mean, it seems like there's, you know, you guys kind of were able to trace some of the origins of where this soundbite basically came from. So it was pretty cool to hear that. And I think that's kind of the, you know, as you were saying, toward the end of that episode, you were like, I don't know if anyone gives a fuck about this, but like, you know, like you said, you're like, sometimes this might be right up someone's alley and they're like, holy shit, this has been really cool or whatever. And I do think that that's half of the fun sometimes of your podcast is it may just meander, but it's one of those things where it feels like exactly why I think a lot of us get into podcasts to have conversations where you feel like a fly on the wall, like you're hanging out with your friends that aren't your friends.
Yeah. And honestly, man, like, with COVID, everything going on with COVID, like the first like 3 or 4 months, I did so many podcasts, being like a guest on people's podcasts. And I had a podcast a few years ago that I just kind of stopped doing. And, like, I can only tell like my origin story so many times before I'm just like seriously, it would get to the point like I would get on with the people before the podcast. I'm like, listen, if you're gonna ask me this, like I can tell you the story in about 5 minutes, uninterrupted. So I was like, I'll throw it in somewhere, but that's not really what I like to talk about. Like, so, and when I started doing, when I was tinkering with the idea of doing the podcast again, I was like, all right, well, what is going to separate what I'm doing from what, say, like, you know, my guitar player Doc is doing, or what Jamie Jost is doing, or what Rob Flynn is doing? And I really think that, because it's more accessible to me to have musicians on my show, I'll typically have more musicians and crew guys and stuff like that. But I'm not limiting myself to who I have on the show. It's basically it could be anybody. Like if I find them interesting, it doesn't matter if they have a following or not. If I can have a good conversation with somebody that isn't really interview driven,
right?
Because I think that's like, you know, the way I really like the way that Doc does it though. Like the X-Man podcast that he has, I really like the way that he does it. I think it's not the same old shit that is like regurgitated with a lot of interviews that you see on like YouTube or for magazines and stuff like that. I really appreciate how Doc does it when it comes into like telling your origin story, because it's like there's a lot of like dots that typically don't get like filled in when you're doing an interview of like, oh, like how did you get here, you know? And it turns into more of like a conversation. But when I was starting mine, I was like, I don't really want to interview motherfuckers, man. Like, I'm not good at like, and when I used to have my old podcast, I would have like notes and like things that I wanted to bring up. And honestly, I did my first episode with Eric D, who's the owner of Meth Syndicate. You're wearing a Meth Syndicate shirt. Sick.
Well, that was actually the funny thing is when you and I did that quick interview at Sonic Temple, which, by the way, that was really horrible on my end because they told me, hey, do you want to talk to someone from Bad Wolves? And I was like, sure. And they didn't tell me who it was until you literally sat down. And I was like, cool. I had no time to prep for anybody.
Yeah, whatever, man.
I asked about your Predator shirt that you were wearing, and then that's from that point on I started following Eric. And the
oh, okay, yeah.
So because of you and me being like, what the fuck is Meth Syndicate?
Honestly, man, like those interviews are like a cattle call. Like everybody does it. Most of the time, you're not going to get the person you really want to interview with, and it's like I'm just there as like filler, and it's fine. I don't care. Like I'll do the interview as best as I can, answer questions the best that I can, and hopefully get some sort of answers that somebody wants.
Well, see, it was funny because the other way was I was like, oh, fuck, I don't want to waste your time because it's like you could be hanging with friends or whatever. Or
no, see, like else. We have a specific time that we have to do press. So it's like we're there for like 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we go to as many, like, all right, yeah, pretty much. It's like it's the speed dating equivalent of doing interviews.
Yeah.
But so when I did my first podcast with Eric, I just kind of like, I didn't have any notes. I didn't really ask him anything. Me and Eric had only met in person like one time before. And although me and him have talked a lot via Instagram or whatever. And I don't know, I was just like, fuck it. Like, I don't need notes. We can just talk. I don't need to like drill him. And then we just kind of started having a conversation while I was finishing setting up. I'm like, hold on, let's just record. And when you start off the conversation, that's kind of why most of my conversations start off like, oh, these guys were already talking. And then I have to tell the guy, hey, shut up for a second. I'm going to start recording. Like, I don't want to like, so, hey guys, how's it going? You know, welcome to my show. Today we have I don't want to do that. I want it to be like, I want it to be as natural and genuine as possible. I don't want it to come off like, whatever.
It was kind of funny in hearing you do that one because I had hit up Eric, and I mean, I'm sure he gets DM'd a shitload, so mine just get lost in the,
Oh, that guy gets fucking more DMs than most girls I know.
But was the thing like, because my last job before the one I'm at now was actually working for a pretty big screen printing company that does stuff for like this company like Ripple Junction. You see their like licensees and like Target. Spencer's and stuff for like PacSun, and for a little while we were doing stuff for like Diamond Company and making like Drake's clothing company and shit like that. So it's like when you kind of get into that world and you're not just making bullshit, but like basically like learning about like there's a company DGK that makes
Dirty Ghetto Kids.
Yeah. So we made a ton of that, and I was, as we're making like the initial run of those, I was like, who the fuck is buying these like kind of stupid shirts? And then I go to the mall and see them like sold out. And I'm like, that's why we're printing these by the thousands every week. But that and Johnny Cupcakes were like one of the first two where I was like, how the fuck are they getting away with making these? And then finding out about the parody law and how parody law basically works for this.
Dude,
or
there's so much shit if it's satire.
Yeah. Or in the event of both Johnny Cupcakes and at least DGK, because it's not officially the thing that it is. It's a, like Johnny Cupcakes, they also do a lot of smaller runs, like under 100. And I think it's because if they get hit with a cease and desist, they'll just go, cool, we won't make it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I know Eric got hit with I didn't realize he got hit with one from PBR from the first shirt that they ever made.
That Misfits one, right?
Yeah. The Misfits PBR shirt. So, I mean, if you're really taking yourself that seriously, like, come on, it's just like a dude. He's not gonna like he's not gonna make more than 500 of these shirts. I doubt he's gonna make more than 200 of these shirts.
I wouldn't be surprised if he makes around 50 to 100 based on
Yeah.
how quick these seem to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, you're going to give a guy a hard time for making a funny t-shirt.
Well, I mean, that's like I had learned through working at that job, being here in Michigan, the Detroit Tigers. So, I mean, like I'm a Braves fan, and I had learned that Detroit actually went out and had to get their own D made because everyone could make bootleg Detroit Tigers merch, and it was okay because you can't own the font.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, they made their own. So then that way they could legally go after people if they are trying to get a cease and desist or whatever. So it was pretty interesting to kind of learn some of that stuff from working at that job and just kind of seeing how, honestly, like a lot of industries, they don't give a fuck about anything other than the bottom line. And if you just kind of like, we were making those shirts that had Gucci Mane's face on them, like the cartoon face.
Oh, yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
So we made the probably hundreds of thousands of those things. And I remember Gucci Mane got out of jail, and then we just stopped making them. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what happened? And they go, oh, well, he got out, found out about it, and then was just like, cut me in on the profits. And they were just like, nope, just stop making them. And I was like, I feel like it would actually do better if the person actually was like, yeah, fuck it, like let's work together on this. But it was just one of those where it's so interesting to see the other side of like that industry that like people just don't even think much of or realize like how like I kind of was surprised to learn how cheap everything can be, but like how once you start factoring in like when you guys get your merch and so forth, it's like the things that you might need to look for where it's like, oh, we're trying to print on these because we can turn a better profit, which is what we do. We don't want to have something, especially if you got to do like price matching and so forth. Having something that isn't worth a $60 t-shirt price or whatever, like you want to try to like give value and comfort, but like there's just so many different variables to shit that like it was just kind of wild to like learn the ins and outs of that business and just be like, wow, there's money to be made if you're ready to hustle in it.
Yeah, and with the whole Gucci Mane thing, like the tricky thing is when you're using somebody's likeness is because you're selling a product based on what somebody looks like. Gucci Mane would probably be he would probably get most of the profits of that shirt. So in turn, their overhead would just be too much. They'd have to probably give, anywhere from 50 to 75% of the profits to Gucci Mane, and then you still got to figure in getting the shirts made. So they would basically, the shirts would literally just be paying for themselves.
Right.
But and when it comes to the making shirts, because I'd made a few shirts on my website. I've taken them down now, but just because I don't want to make shitty t-shirts now. Now I understand where Eric comes from. He wants to sell his shirts for a good price, but I can't do Gildan. Like the way I have to wash those shirts is to make them softer is it fades them faster. And it's just, I wanted a t-shirt that was going to be comfortable and soft. And so I decided with the guy who prints my shirts, Jad Dovey from Vegas, who owns Jad is Rad and a few other companies, Rad Custom Shirts.com. I paid probably $5 or $6 more per shirt just to have that brand of t-shirt because I knew that they were softer. They were
probably the next levels of the tri blends.
Yeah, next level. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but and then I would, of course, in turn have to charge a bit more for my shirts. And honestly, it's just like if I didn't have a massive stock, which I never did, I would just do orders.
Right. Like
if I had a massive stock, cool, I would keep the t-shirts up and just, whenever somebody wanted them, whatever, I'd send one out. But it was getting to a point that the mail was getting so screwed up that because I live in LA, Jad lives in Vegas, and it's like he would send me a package and it would take a week and a half to get from Vegas when it should take when I paid for 2 day. I would always pay for overnight is ridiculous on anything, but I would always make sure I would pay 2 day to make sure that I got those shirts as quick as I could to get them out to my customers. And it was just getting to be, too long of a wait. And then I would have these lulls where I would have like 4 t-shirt orders there. I'm like, cool, I have to wait now. I'm not going to do a 4 t-shirt order.
Right.
And then I would get like 10 or 12 more. And then I would put that order in. And then out of nowhere, like later that week, I would get like another 15 or 20 shirt orders. So I was always having to like let people know when I was putting my orders in. So that way they could order their shirt before then. And then they would still like order the shirt after that deadline. Like, oh, did I miss the deadline? I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to wait till I do my next order. It could be a month, dude.
So the thing that's been kind of interesting, and you know, it's been interesting to see some of these ancillary businesses pop up. And I don't know if it's a solution or how you feel about it, given, you know, the fact that you touch on this question in a minute. But like Teesprings or some of those things where basically they make the shirt for you, they send it out, they do everything for you, you set a price, and that kind of shows you what you'll stand to make based on the price you make.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked into something like that to kind of alleviate some of that? So whenever someone orders a shirt, it's like, cool, then you'll get it. It might take a week and a half, 2 weeks for them to make it and send it to you. It may not be as good as going and literally getting someone screen printed, because I almost look at them more as like when you go to the mall and you see those fuckers making like kind of hobo shirts. But I've been pleasantly surprised. Like my wife bought some leggings of my podcast, you know, because we have a store, and I was surprised to see how good they were and how good the print came out.
Mm-hmm.
And she even had said, and I won't mention the band that she bought a pair of leggings from, on it's like a big band, but she spent more money on that band's leggings, and she goes, yours are better. And so, I mean, it's like, I'm kind of seeing like some of these businesses are starting to get a little bit better with the quality. And, you know, obviously with having literally a whole store, like if you know your shirts, if you know how to kind of design something, you can make a good looking shirt on these things and turn a decent profit if that's what you're into or whatever. But it allows you to not literally have to do pre-orders, not have to have any physical inventory in your house that you're just sitting on.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of the best of all worlds for people who do shit like that.
Yeah, I hadn't really looked into that. I know. So I've this buddy, Rufus. He's a Chinese bass player, and anytime he comes out with merch, like me, I really like his aesthetic. It's super, you know, neon and bright, and you know, kind of like futuristic, which you know I totally get down on. And so he told me about a company that he gets his shirts from. And that's what he does because he's in Hong Kong, but most of his fan base is USA based. So his store, I think it's based in like North Carolina. I think I have a sticker or something around for it somewhere. So most of his orders get shipped from North Carolina, even though he lives in Hong Kong. And so I was kind of thinking about that, but I really kind of think I oversaturated myself because I wanted to have like a bunch of different options for people. And I think I might have just overwhelmed anybody who like came to my store, like, Jesus Christ, this motherfucker's got like 800 picks, 17 t-shirts. And, you know, so I think moving forward, if I start doing t-shirts again, I will probably go that route, mainly because when touring starts, I'm not going to be able to bring my own merch. I'm not going to be able to fill orders from home. So it's like, you know, I'm going to either have to hire somebody to do pick orders and then have a company like, you know, like Teespring or whomever, just have my shirt orders. And I mean, that makes it literally easy. Like I would rather not have to deal with folding fucking t-shirts. So
got one of those blue, or well, I guess they come in different colors, but the things that make the nice shirt folds.
Dude, I worked in retail for a long time. I don't need those things.
Yeah, same. Yeah, actually, the best before they came out with those things was just the Hot Topic way of using a clipboard.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I want to come up with something new and maybe just do one at a time. Like see how it does, and if people are into it, and it's like something that's at least somewhat consistent, I'll think of maybe doing something like the Teespring. But I kind of like that my shirts are limited, you know. Like I think in total I've probably sold in all 4 designs I've sold under 200 t-shirts.
So One of my favorite things that Johnny Cupcakes did, and I had never seen anyone do this, and I was like, that's such I mean, as the collector in me was like, that's such a fucking great idea to push fucking units out, is we would hand number them so that we would make an inner label, and it would be out of like 50, and then we would just randomly pick a number and just randomly assign a number to them.
Oh shit.
So you might be a double XL, but you might have gotten 2 out of 50.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really fucking cool. That like they took it a step further to kind of increase like the collectability of their garments.
Yeah, so you get guys trying to get just certain numbers, like buying all sorts of sizes, if that's, you know, if they're really into that brand.
Yeah, and then there was so much stuff that I learned about doing all that I just, you know, like I don't mind prints like this, and probably sort of like yours, but I kind of like more of the and I'm trying to remember the ink name, but it doesn't really matter for those who don't give a fuck about it. But it's the kind that like when you touch the shirt, you don't feel the print at all, and it won't really fade away. Like those are like, put those on a next level.
Yeah, and three of my shirts, actually, no, two of my shirts have that. My metal logo one is like that, and then I have a little neon light t-shirt that's like just on the breast. That's very much like that. My CyberConk t-shirt, you can definitely tell that there's it was screen printed, and same with the rip, mainly just because of how many colors they have.
Yeah, looking at that, I was like, oh, I would not want to set that up.
Yeah, so it's, you know, they're just a lot of colors. Like even I think in the rip t-shirt, that's 3 or 4 different colors. Even though it just looks like neon green, it's not just neon green. There's, you know, there's yellow, there's lime, there's dark green, there's blue, there's a whole bunch of different colors that make that color. So the more color you have, and just like if you're just doing like white on a black t-shirt, that's super easy. You won't even be able to tell that there's print on your t-shirt other than the visual. Touching it, you won't be able to tell.
Yeah.
But the more color you have, the more texture there will be.
Yeah, that's why I always hated doing like the stuff for like Diamond or whatever, where it's like a giant fucking print right here. It just feels like you have like an extra pound on your chest.
Oh yeah.
Super thick. So, you know, kind of funny that you bring up Cyberpunk. So you have been championing this game, and you know, like I am a gamer. I just you know, pre-ordered my Xbox One Series X the, you know, day one when it went live, which was sort of a clusterfuck. But not half as bad, I guess, as the PlayStation 5 has been for everybody.
Oh, dude, yeah. I don't pre-order consoles, man. Like I was one of the people that pre-ordered the original Xbox 360, and I had a lot of problems with that. I had pre-ordered. I had a special pre-order limited edition of the PS4, and that was fucked up. So I think like 2 consoles that I had pre-ordered and got the first batches of were piles of shit.
Those 2 consoles, the Xbox 360 was notorious for red ringing on people, regardless of what the issue was, typically overheating. Yeah. Secondly, though, those, from what I understand, because I just recently got the PlayStation 4, like last Black Friday, and was a thing where all I heard about was how bad, I think they're catching on fire. The original PlayStation 4s, I think, were they the ones that were catching on fire, or was that the 3?
I think that wasn't the 4. Mine just had the fan would get so loud
that the fan would get so loud. It sounded like an engine.
Yeah, it would sound like an engine, but then it would mess up the internal system, and then it would like glitch. And so I think just because from that experience, and honestly, we still have probably about 6 to 8 months before PlayStation and Xbox start making new exclusive, like the next gen title only.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, about a year or so. I still have about a year or so of games before that. So I'm just going to see how this first round comes out. And if there's no problems, then I'll go ahead and get some next gen consoles. But until then, I have so many games on my PS4 that I could still be playing.
Yeah, I'm still making my way through Last of Us 2 very slowly. Because I had like, because when I bought the PlayStation 4 last year, I basically bought every game I wanted, which was Last of Us original, like the remaster, all the Uncharted's, and Spider-Man, and
Yeah.
then MLB The Show, and was a thing where like I buzzed through Spider-Man. So then I was like, oh, like not really interested in the PlayStation 5 at first, and then they announced that like the new Spider-Man game basically is going to be like one of their first ones for the PlayStation 5, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
maybe I want that too.
Actually, I did a bunch of tweets to Rockstar probably about a month or two ago, just asking them because I saw that they were going to be making Grand Theft Auto 5 for the PlayStation 5. And basically all I was just tweeting at them was just like, bruh, there hasn't been a new Grand Theft Auto title in 7 years, which is the longest stretch in between two titles.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have a third console with Grand Theft Auto 5 because it was PS3, PS4, now PS5. And I was like, dude, the PS3 gave us four Grand Theft Auto, two mainstream Grand Theft Auto titles, and two offshoots, the Ballad of Gay Tony and then the Lost and Damned. So I was like, really, you got 3 quality games out of the PS. Actually, I think that was PS3. Yeah, that was PS3. PS4, all you got was GTA 5, and I get that they're still, they're pumping as much as they can into their moneymaker, which is Grand Theft Auto Online. But I mean, you can't I really feel like they should break off. There should be one Rockstar that's like, yo, we're in charge of the online shit, and then we're in charge of the proprietary titles, because I think they know the next time they have to come out with a Grand Theft Auto, they're going to have a bigger and better online service. Because I mean, dude, once that comes out, people are going to be playing the Grand Theft Auto Online for Grand Theft Auto 6 or whatever the fuck they decide to call this next one. And in a year or two after that, they're just going to shut down the servers for GTA 5 Online. I mean, unless it sucks so bad that people are going back to GTA 5's online to do that. But yeah, I just basically told them, I was like, yo, you pumped out 4 GTA games on one console, and then just all of the sudden, how many Rockstar games have we had in this past 7 years? What, GTA 5 came out in 2013?
Was it LA Noire was one?
I mean, dude, that was on I had that for Xbox 360. So that was a PS3 title. I'm talking about. So I'm like, in the past 8 years, we've had 2, and I think that came out in 2008. It came out in 2008 or 2009. We've had 2 Rockstar titles, real Rockstar titles in the past 8 years. Red Dead and GTA 5.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other game I'm slowly making my way through. Because once spoilers, I guess, for whatever, these games have been out for fucking forever.
That game came out in 2016. If you don't know the ending to fucking Red Dead 2 by now,
I mean, I haven't played it, but here's the thing: once you meet up with the main character of the first game, I was like, oh, well, I already know where this is going.
Yeah.
It was kind of not very well. To me, I feel like they should have brought Marsden out way after the fact, well into the game, not right away. And I was like, oh,
well, I think people, even before that Marsden was introduced, because of how the original Red Dead went, people had assumed
people off if you ask them.
Yeah, how the original Red Dead went is kind of okay, they're probably going to do that again. And I mean, honestly, the way that they got there, I was totally fine with. I honestly prefer Red Dead 2's storyline to Red Dead 1's storyline, but I felt like because there wasn't so many characters, you were able to connect more on a personal level with the characters of Red Dead 1. But yeah.
Yeah, and again, spoilers for those who maybe haven't played Last of Us 2, but that because I had started playing it and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna have all this time when I get furloughed. Like when I got furloughed, I was like, I'm gonna have all this time to play, Last of Us 2. I pre-ordered it, it'll come out at midnight. And then I just got immersed in house projects, like repainting most of the house and doing landscaping shit and doing that instead, to where I was like, I don't want to play video games. Excuse me. And was a thing where I just recently picked it back up, and again, not very far into the game, but when Joel dies, I was like, holy shit. That was heartbreaking.
I mean, I had the spoilers of the game were leaked to me pretty early on.
I still thankfully haven't come across anything, so it's everything that's going to happen is still going to be fresh to me and new.
And I don't know if because of that reason, because the first Last of Us, I was able to connect with it on an emotional level, like pretty much right away. And when I can connect with something on an emotional level, it always tends to be, regardless of how the story turns out, it's always at least a fun experience for me. So maybe knowing the spoilers of the game kind of ruined my experience. And I think in turn made me like not have any sort of emotional response to like, I played the first 2 hours, I think, of that game. And I'm just like, meh, like I could give a shit less about it,
But part of me wonders, because you were talking about this with Travis, which I really like that episode because Travis, other than Alex, which probably won't happen now, but Alex and Travis are the only two from a trio I haven't had on the show. And Travis is always someone that's intrigued me because he doesn't do a lot of press. So hearing him talk about things that he's into was really cool because, like I said, he's really reserved and you don't hear a lot from him, and he's not big on social media really. So it's kind of like why I enjoy the podcast format with those who can get people who aren't typically on shows. But what was interesting though, and something I had kind of wondered is it because the person you controlled throughout that whole story, you basically don't control. And so therefore the connection to the environment, to the story, to everything that you'd gone through isn't there.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, I also played the DLC for the original Last of Us, and I didn't, and of course, you also control Ellie a few times in the first one as well.
Yeah,
but like even controlling Ellie this time around, I was just like, the beginning of that game is so fucking long and slow.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden you're fucking somebody else,
and then somebody else again.
Yeah, and I'm just like, yo, what the fuck is going on here? Who is this bitch? Why? And then all of a sudden you're back to being Ellie and you're throwing snowballs at kids. I'm just like, I was like, at least with the first one, like you had that whole like 20-30 minute opening scene where you're like running away from everybody, and it's like that's basically your only action that you can do is just like move the character. But it's like it's giving you a story, and I just feel like I had the same problem going from Far Cry 3 to Far Cry 4.
See, I'd only played Far Cry 5. So, and everyone says that 3 is like the best out of the series.
Yeah, 3 is the absolute best out of the series.
Okay.
So when I went from playing Far Cry 3 to Far Cry 4, I just had no emotional attachment to any of the characters, anything that was going on. I was just like, yo, this is kind of dry. And I only played the game, I think, for a couple of hours. So I was just like, whatever, at least I got this for free. And I just think with how The Last of Us 2 started, was very similar. And I was just,
see, the thing I'm hoping for, and this is kind of the thing about those games, is like it almost feels like you're kind of playing a movie, or like you're indirectly controlling a movie.
Yeah.
Is I'm wondering if Last of Us 2 is going to be sort of like how, and I can't remember the director's name, but the guy who did, because I just recently saw Hereditary for the first time. I had seen Midsummer.
Yeah.
But both of those movies move very slow. But the payoff is in the end when it starts ramping up, and then you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Like that's kind of the thing. It's a slow burn. So I mean, granted, again, like I haven't finished Last of Us 2.
Ari Aster is who you were thinking of.
Yeah, and it's a thing where I'm kind of, maybe because like Hereditary and I mean, if you've seen Midsummer, that movie should probably just stick with you because it's so fucked up. I think it's more fucked up than Hereditary personally, but I don't know. That seems to be a debate. Everyone's like, Hereditary is the better film. It's more horror thing, and to me, I kind of like more of the. I
They're
didn't know where
both
Midsummer
fucking
was
weird.
going. I didn't know where it was going at first, so I think that's why I kind of, because like the opening sequence of that movie of Midsummer. Granted, I watched it on the laptop I'm on right now with my noise canceling headphones on my way back from Vegas, and I was like immersed in Midsummer. Like it was on. That was all I was paying attention to in my world. Whereas Hereditary, I was in my house, not as directly connected to it. So maybe that's why I have more of a connection to Midsummer. But there are things about that both movies where I just feel like maybe that's where Last of Us 2 is going to go, where it's going to be a slow burn for quite a bit of the game until you get toward the end, and then it's going to pick up and kind of make up for all the slow narrative that you're getting.
Yeah. I don't know,
Probably
man.
not.
Like, I mean, like I said, I'm only like 2 hours into the game, but like we're talking about like Midsommar and Hereditary. Like I don't know why. Maybe it's just because of the aesthetic of the movie. I'm also not a big fan of the A24 films. But like Midsommar reminded me of fucking Wicker Man, and I just couldn't get over that. Like just the whole thing. I was just like I was like, I swear to God, if these motherfuckers pull out some bees, I'm turning this shit off. And it just, I don't know, it just reminded me a lot of Wicker Man, and mainly the aesthetic, like not so much the story, similar in certain aspects, but like Hereditary is just like, yo, like if you don't understand anything that has to do with like the supernatural or like pagan or anything like that, that movie can be confusing as fuck to just random Joe Schmo on the street. Like that movie was like so specific.
Yeah.
Like who the fuck knows what payment is?
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
like,
I think like in that movie, and again, spoilers, but whatever, that movie's been out for fucking forever. But what was the first like oh shit moment I had? Because like, they're showing like the grandmother burning, and then you see like a dude kind of pointing at the daughter, and I was like, okay. And a weird connection I've made, and I don't know, the few people I've talked to that have seen both haven't necessarily picked up on this, so I don't know if I'm inferring something that's not there or maybe is. But in both movies, people who are on the spectrum, depending on how far one way or the other, but are almost like in Midsommar, like a inbred dude is like who like what they built their religion on, because he's pure.
yeah.
He has been clouded by stuff. And in Hereditary, Charlie basically is kind of on the spectrum a little bit, and she's sort of the conduit for a lot of these things. And I was like, okay, like what's there? What is there? Because that's an interesting idea that he is using people that are quote unquote undesirables or that are often overlooked as integral parts of these cultures, or at least the.
Well, I know with at least Midsommar, like a lot of that has to do in like the ritual itself is based in. I don't know about so much the movie, but I know that the midsummer festivals are based in kind of in true fashion, and I'm not very familiar with Swedish folklore, but I know with Hereditary, like basically, Charlie was basically the conduit between the grandmother and them needing a male for payment and all the weird ritual shit. But I didn't really pick that up too much. But I mean, that could be another one of those things that's just like making the like you said, making the undesirables like a power or influence on certain cultures.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of something I was picking up on. And then as I was saying this, because I had to, as I was telling you, like, because we were supposed to do this like a week ago, and then I had to go home to a funeral. But I was kind of even thinking about the ritual that starts off Midsummer, basically, like where I think it's at 65. That's it, you're done. kill yourself, jump off that cliff or whatever. And I was like,
yeah. And then if you don't die, they smash your head in with that big ass mallet. Jesus Christ.
Holy shit. And I remember thinking about how that's kind of maybe a really great idea. Like, cause then you're within reason, you go out with all your faculties.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something kind of oddly beautiful about that idea and that concept, but it's also like, yeah, but I think the one dude didn't make it, and then he just suffered a horrible, horrible death. And you're like, I don't know if that's worth it though.
Yeah. I mean, like, I get what you're saying, but like, and yeah, going out with all your faculties and going out with dignity, not having, not being a burden on anybody in your family, not fucking having to have, people in your family look after you or bathe you or change your clothes or wipe your ass or anything like that. Yeah, I get it, but like, it seems nice and well, but then it's just like, everybody lives till 65. And granted, there might be some problems that does fix, overpopulation and shit like that. And then if people just know that, like, at 60 on my 65th birthday, that's when I die. So maybe actually having an end date to your life would probably make you appreciate things a lot more and probably want to do more with your life. But then again, there's also the like, yo, that's kind of fucking fucked up.
No, absolutely. It also is like another podcast I listen to that kind of deals with sex education and so forth. One of the things that they've kind of brought up and that has been an interesting thinking point has been about how the idea of marriage and monogamy and how maybe we as people weren't meant to ever do that, be committed to one person for literally life, because when marriages and shit started, you were like 13 getting married and you were only going to live to be like 22 or 25. So
yeah, and there's the whole thing of like, the whole Christian marriage thing, and like, and then there's the whole reason why, people in country who have like kings and queens were like bringing families together to make certain, to make stronger. And it's like, I mean, I don't know, man. I've never, I was in a relationship for a really fucking long time, and I helped raise a child in that. And I never once was just like, yeah, getting married sounds really fucking good. So for me, I can see where they're coming from making that point. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't really fucking care if homie next door gets married or doesn't get married, if anybody I know gets married or doesn't get married, because it literally has no effect on my life whatsoever.
No.
But I just think like, and then the whole like common law marriage thing is really weird, because I know it's different in like every state. Like in Texas, it's 2 years,
really,
and then like you're technically married.
I know in some like 10.
It's 7 in California.
Okay.
So I made sure to get out before 7 years.
Well, it's been fun. Got me, bitch.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe I'm still, sour and enjoying my time being a single guy, just enjoying the fruits of my labor, or whatever you want to call it. But I mean, I've never really wanted kids. I've never really wanted to get married. It does not sound like fucking. And I could be completely wrong. Like this time next year, who knows? I could have met the woman of my dreams and decide that, well, I want to have a fucking pile of kids and married and like. But as of right now, I'm just like, yo, I'm good. I got my fucking toys on the wall. I got my fucking movie posters all over the fucking wall. I can wear my stupid video game t-shirts and like not have people like, oh, why do you wear that shirt again? Like, Well,
that's like one of my favorite random stories is like, I ended up a long time ago getting a CM Punk Pop Funko. Like I don't collect many of them, but that was one I was like, this is cool. Like I like him, and they got the tattoos on it, and that was kind of tight. And I remember ordering it and then finally getting it. And my wife just going like, what does it do? And I was like, nothing.
Stands there.
Yeah. And then I was like, I had never felt so dumb for spending money on something until she was just like, well, what does it do? And I was like, nothing.
Oh, I mean, dude, like I'm really, I'm really into like toys and stuff like that. So I remember we were on tour with 3 Days Grace and Five Finger Death Punch. It was like November, December, and I remember pre-ordering this action figure for Cyberpunk 2020. I was a total drunk pre-order. I was hammered, and I was like, I got like some advertisement or some email from GameStop or something. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna buy Keanu Reeves' Johnny Silverhand right now, and I forgot about it, and it shows up at my house in March, and I'm just like, oh yeah, and then it's one of my friends was like, one of my friends was over at the time, and he's like, oh, where'd you get that? And I was like, oh, from GameStop. He's like, how much was it? I was like, $50. He's like, what are you gonna do with it? I was like, put it on my shelf. He's like, you're not gonna open it? I'm like, nah, man. I gotta leave Keanu alone. And my ex's kid used to hate that so much because I would have like, I have action figures that are worth over $100 like on the resale market, and he'd be like, can I open this? I'm like, nah, dude, you can't. It's like, well, why do you have it? I said, to look nice. They're not to play. No, they're not to play. But I mean, who cares if it makes you happy? Like, yeah, it's a piece of plastic that probably costs fucking 38 cents to make, and they charged me $50 for it, but I like it,
I think that's kind of the funny thing. Like, I have been making the comment that I'm basically just rebuying my youth in various ways. Like, in the last couple of years, like Dennis Rodman was one of my favorite players. I own one of every jersey from every team he played for, including the Mavericks, which he played for them for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was a thing where like someone's like, well, now what? And I'm like, I wear them.
Yeah.
Or like with records, like, like people are like, well, why you already have this on CD? I'm like, yeah, but now I have it on vinyl.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like,
makes me happy.
Yeah. And that's the thing is it's kind of funny how some people like, you can see right here one of my Jermaine Rogers posters, my Deftones posters. We went to Austin, Texas, and happened to go to this gallery where all of like a ton of Jermaine Rogers stuff was, and the guy was like, oh, like, so, at the time I was working at the screen printing place. So like the guy was like talking about like the different kinds of papers and the foils and the inks and all this kind of stuff. So it was really cool. But like we were in Texas for less than an hour, and I dropped like $400 on 2 posters that are just sitting on my wall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those, like, some people are like, that's cool. How much does that cost? I was like, oh, that one, that's an artist print. So like that was like $275. And they're like, for a poster? And I'm like,
yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the stuff like that, like the jerseys, the posters, the action figures, I got a bunch of fucking goofy posters and pictures all over my wall. I mean, it's art regardless. I mean, even the toys, like someone took time to sit there and fucking detail something out at like a 1:16 ratio of the original real life thing. And then, or, something that hasn't been like in real life. It's a character of fiction that has only been seen on the 2D scale, but now it's in, it's in the real life. I could touch it. I can move its little fucking arms and legs and shit. I mean, to me, that's art. And, if it's something that you're into and something that you appreciate, I mean, I just say, fuck it. If you like it, you like it. I mean, I do have a closet full. Everyone who comes over laughs. I have literally 400 different black t-shirts. Like, why do you have so many t-shirts? Because I like them. Do you know how many t-shirts I buy a week? I buy 6 t-shirts a week.
Well, since you admitted that, I have drunkenly and not drunkenly in the last I'll say 3 months, I have probably bought 8 Atlanta Braves hats.
I'm not a hat guy, but yo, dude, if it makes you happy. All right. So I remember,
but I also am into shoes. I'll be starting a new job here pretty soon, and I'll be making the most money I've ever made. And so at one point my wife was like, what's one thing, like a stupid frivolous purchase you're going to buy? And I was like, well, I mean, I'm into shoes. So like, I'm going to buy my first pair of 11s.
Yeah.
And she was like, what are those? And I was like, I mean, you'll know when you see them. Like, and then like the bar we were at, like a guy's like, I have 15 pairs of 11s and I have 340 pairs of shoes. And
Jesus.
showed us the collection and his like different pairs of 11s. She was like, "What's so special about the 11s?" I was like, "If you're into Nike and you're into Jordan, you gotta have a pair of 11s. Like, just have to." Like, it's
Yeah,
cool.
I think Doc just bought his first pair of 11 lows.
Mm.
I'm more into ones, threes, fours, and fives.
Mm.
I've got 15 pairs of ones. I've got 4 pairs of fours. I've got 4 pairs of fives. And then I have like random, like I have my house shoes, which are like my Toms and like my outside slippers and shit like that. But
did you see those Adidas Crocs that just dropped? Or I don't know.
I
If they
did.
dropped, but I saw them today.
Yeah. I so they have the little shell toe and everything.
Yeah.
I almost bought a pair of Adidas. I used to wear the Adidas Superstar. I wore those for probably 20 years, and I stopped wearing them with the band because I'm like, Doc and Tommy got me into Jordans, so now unfortunately, like that's my thing.
It's like I mean, I know you all. I don't know if it was when you guys signed, or I don't remember what the circumstance was, but you all got a pair of Bad Wolves Air Forces. Was that what it was? Ones?
No, they were Air Jordan 1s.
Air Jordan. Okay.
And I don't know if Chris got a pair, but I know me, Doc, and Tommy had custom ones.
And I know Doc sold his recently.
I sold mine too. I sold mine last summer. Yeah, but they weren't highs, they were mids. And it's so funny. I mean, they were $80 on StockX at the time, those shoes. And they were, black and gray, which was kind of like our color scheme for the first record, and we all just decided to just say fuck it. I mean, it was expensive as fuck to customize them because they were literally customized from paint to they took the Jumpman tags off of the tongue and put the Bad Wolves tags on there, like had my name on them. I mean, the customization on those shoes alone was
like some spooky pajamas.
It was like $250, I think, just to customize them the way that we wanted, and then the shoes were about $86. So, I mean, it was definitely, that was like the most I'd ever paid for a shoe. I think still, I've a budget. I typically don't go over. I won't go over $300 when it comes to a pair of shoes.
So funny enough, that was my number. We went to Atlanta about a month and a half ago, and I popped into this like place over in Little Five Points, and like they have a clothing store upstairs, and it'll be like where you find like they had a pair of like red bandana shorts. Excuse me. They were like $600. So that kind of gives you an idea of like the kind of store I was in. And I was like, you know what? Fucking, I'm in Atlanta. Like, I'm gonna go ball out and buy like a really nice pair of shoes. My number was $300, and I found a pair of Jordans that had like they were like baseball stitching. They're like white shoes with the baseball stitching. And I was like, all right, those are pretty tight. I want those. And then they were like, oh, they're on sale for like $100. I was like, oh shit, all right. And then I found another pair that were like leather, like black leather, just like Nikes, like almost like a sort of like a high, like a mid top. But then the swoosh has like gold stitching on around the black. So it looks kind of nice and like really nice, like casual looking kind of a leathery shoe. And I was like, all right, I'll take a pair of those then too. And then the lady was like, oh, those are on sale for $60. And I was like, okay. And then the dude upstairs, as I was checking out, because I found a pair of 11s that were like the Carolina blue ones. And I was like, yeah, kind of want those too. But I also had to fly back, and I was like, and I have to throw away the boxes. So I was like, I'm not trying to just keep buying shoes that I have to fly back with. But they had just come out with those like almost like that Adidas Croc, like that Nike like sandal thing that's like super patent shit that had just recently come out. That like I saw one and I was like, I kind of want that. They're like obnoxiously ugly, but they kind of are low-key tight too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, for the like honestly, like if I'm wearing like slides or slippers or something like that, like I definitely don't want to cover my
Your
toes. Yeah, I want, like, I'm wearing those bitches to air out, you know. like I don't know about the whole, like, you know, my personal trainer wears Crocs, and he like has like this whole reason of why he wears Crocs, and it makes total sense. and I can't remember it for the life of me right now, so or else I would tell you. But I'm just like, all right, cool. Like, yo, this motherfucker has like every single color Croc you can imagine. He's got custom Crocs that have the fucking Avengers on it. Like, I don't even know if they make those. He's got them all, dude. He's got like some camouflage ones. He's got some like,
I think those are the Post Malone ones.
Yeah, he's got every color I've ever seen. This motherfucker just loves Crocs.
So kind of as we'll kind of segue into something else here in just a second, but what is one of your, because I feel like being out on tour and especially being in different time zones and just everything and kind of, you know, jet lag, whatever, just getting all kinds of fucked up, that you could potentially be in an interesting mindset, maybe not necessarily drunk or whatever, but just kind of like, oh, I'm kind of delirious from jet lag or whatever, and just kind of browsing for shit. What's been one of, like, other than your cyberpunk action figure or in action figure? I don't know if it moves.
Oh, it moves. Yeah, it's got like a sick guitar and everything.
Okay, I was gonna say, what's been one of your purchases where when you woke up the next day and saw like the confirmation email or whatever, like, oh fuck, I bought that.
We'll see. And the weird thing was when I bought the cyberpunk action figure, because it was a pre-order and because it was coming from GameStop, it didn't go to my direct mailbox. It went to like my promotions mailbox. So I didn't even see the confirmation on that. And I mean, for the most part, I tend to not make purchases where I'm just like, you know, I can be a really impulsive buyer, but because I'm also very indecisive, I have to know exactly for sure. Like, dude, even when I'm like doing my Amazon shopping, like, you know, just getting normal stuff for the house, like laundry detergent or dish soap or whatever, like I'm indecisive and I'm going back and forth. I'm like, well, this one's got more reviews. Oh, but this one's a little bit cheaper and the reviews aren't that bad. And so I kind of just go back and forth. So I'm not really an indecisive purchaser. And I can't think of anything that comes to mind of me just be like, oh fuck, actually, you know what? No. Yeah, I can't really think of anything.
Better man than me. I drunkenly, after coming back from Atlanta, and we were at a speakeasy and Ludacris was across from us. So then when we came back, my wife started, her new thing lately has been watching old music videos on like Apple TV or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went through this like whole phase of like Atlanta hip hop that she apparently missed on, but is whatever. So as we're watching some of these, I kept seeing, like, I just recently got the white on white of this like a couple of days ago, because like watching a Big Boy from an Outkast video from like way back in the day, like him having it, I was like, fuck, I always wanted that hat and I could never find it. And then through scouring the internet, I finally found one. But I drunkenly bought an Atlanta Braves starter jacket that was like on Poshmark for $10. And I mean,
for $10,
I know, but I had no recollection until I looked at my email and I was like, the fuck did I buy from Poshmark? What the fuck is Poshmark? And then I like looked at my email and I was like, yo, that's a tight jacket. And so it was almost like getting re-stoked on it all over again. And sadly, the person never replied to me buying it, and then they were just like, it's been 20 days, if you just want to cancel the order you can. So then I was like, cool, I'll just reinvest it in a Deion Sanders jersey soon. But it's always funny talking to some people who are like, oh, so I woke up and I bought like a new set of pots and pans, or like just weird shit that people buy because they are on weird shit.
No, dude, like I'm so indecisive when it comes to everything. Like,
are you that way with your musical gear? Like if you're buying gear?
No, because I'm more knowledgeable about musical gear than I am about household products. Like, dude, even this shirt, I found this shirt and it's an actual Bethesda shirt.
Okay.
It says Bethesda id Software on the collar there. Like I saw this shirt for $16 on Amazon and I was like, oh, am I gonna buy it? And I was like, yeah. All the other sizes are $20, so that means I have to buy this size for $16. And I thought about it, look at the reviews. I'm like, oh man, I saw some really bad reviews and it's like really shitty. And then there was like from a couple of years ago, there was like a review. It's like, this shirt fucking sucks. And I'm like, oh no. And then I went down and saw one that was from a few months ago. There's like, no, they fixed it. It's the actual shirt. Don't worry, you're not going to get a piece of shit product. If you do, they'll either refund you or send you a replacement. I'm like, all right, I feel good about this. And I got it. I bought it. And they were saying that like, oh, it looks like there's a border around the shirt. And I like looked at it. I'm like, nah, man, this is like a Bethesda fucking Doom t-shirt, dude. So I'm like, yo, I lucked out. I got this shit for $16.
Did you see that someone? Yeah, it was Doom. I was like, did you see someone could play Doom on a
pregnancy test? Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous.
Oh shit. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about your podcast. Something I think that's interesting talking to other podcasters or people who have been doing it for a while is asking them what they've learned about themselves as far as communication and how they communicate.
I say fucking way too much, and I'm really trying to not do that. But
have you gotten to the point now where you know what your ums, ands, and likes look like in a WAV file or WAV format?
No, I'm not that. But see, here's the thing. That's actually how I talk. Like, because when a lot of people do the ums and ands and likes when they're doing a podcast, it's because they don't know how to speak on a microphone. They're thinking too much about like, but when I talk to people, like I say like and wool a lot. My wool is actually like, it's actually well, but it comes out as wool. So that's actually how I talk. So it's for me to like get out of the trying to stop saying is really hard because it's literally how I talk.
The thing that was interesting to me, and it wasn't until really going back and editing some of the episodes more, was that I realized when talking to foreign people, not from here in the US, I noticed that when they don't have the idea completely able to be articulated, they stop, they think of what they want to say, and then they go. They don't just keep rambling on.
Mm-hmm.
And I started taking that same philosophy and trying to do the same, because when you're editing, if you're just rambling through, trying to edit that out and sequence it back up is so hard.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
It's absolutely a nightmare. So a lot of times
it's a lot easier to shorten that blank dead space than it is to like, well, I was doing this. Oh, wait, fuck, I fucked that up. I'll try it again.
Yeah. So it's definitely taught me to not be afraid of not having what I want to say right away, to stop and think about what I want to say and get it out the right way for the first time.
Yeah.
As well as I think it's made me a better listener overall.
Oh, I mean, that was one of the main reasons why I got rid of my notes, is because I felt like I was paying more attention to my notes than I was the person that was talking in front of me. And so by getting rid of the notes and talking to people, listening, and like not just waiting for my turn to speak, but actually listen to what they were saying and add to what they are saying. It's definitely made me a better listener, and it helps me because I mean we all get sidetracked, but it helps me kind of stay on point. And if there's anything else, because I mean, dude, I repeat myself so fucking much on my podcast, it's not even fucking funny. But it really helps, helps listening, helps bringing up topics or sidelining, or just be like, hey.
Oh, I almost thought you were gonna have more to say.
No,
just stopped really abruptly. That was an exclamation.
Yeah. See, I still haven't nailed it yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the interesting thing. And I think what's, something that I've always liked about Doc, and it's what I think separates some of my favorite podcasters from those that I kind of start leaning away from. Some like I love Justice podcast most of the time, but something that drives me nuts is that he'll go down a tangent and never come back to the cool thing that he was talking about. He is terrible at it.
I try to not do that because I have been like in a situation where I was doing a podcast and someone's like, dude, so what the fuck was the rest of that story? I'm like, what story? And they're like, oh, this. I'm like, oh, did I not finish what I was saying?
Yeah. And so a lot of times, like what I've realized I've gotten really good at, and Doc's really good at this too, is even when they go down tangents, Doc's really good about bringing it back to where he was.
Doc is also a very well thought out speaker. He is definitely one of those guys who has a thought process before he speaks and is able to like digress really well. Like, oh, I digress, bring it on back. And he is a much better speaker than I am. But you know, it is what it is. And again, that is another reason why I do enjoy his podcast as well, is just because of how well thought out and well spoken he is. Because I mean, I'm a fucking train wreck, dude. And I'm totally fine with being a train wreck. And if you can handle my and whats and wools and my random fucking tangents, and you know, I do try to actively bring it back to points I was making, because that does drive me crazy. And sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. But you know, when you're having a conversation, it's really easy. And that's one thing that's so much different than having an interview style podcast as just having a conversation, is that when you're having a conversation with somebody, it's a lot easier to get lost in like each section as you go. And then you're like, oh, well, we started here, we ended up here, there was like a little trail off right here, and I was supposed to go back, but I forgot to. And you know, it can get a little messy sometimes, and I know it has gotten messy on my show. But again, I'm not doing the podcast for, you know, to try to get that sponsor money or for $1 million. Like, I just do it for fun, and people can like it, people cannot like it. I don't care. I'm just going to continue to do my butts, and woles.
There's your next shirt.
Butts, and woles.
But it was kind of interesting because, like, you know, having had Doc on this show and even doing one of these, I always feel like I have to bring my A game, because like,
oh, you have to Doc it out. He is the first month. He will call you out right away. Me and Doc have done probably 2 or 3 podcasts together, and he is the first person to call you out. And that's one thing I love about him. I remember when I did his X-Man podcast, it was 2 years ago, I think now. And we were talking about like my backstory or whatever. And he's just like, what the fuck does this have to do with anything that we're talking about? I'm like, oh yeah. All right. Well,
well, it was like one of those things, like the last time we did one of these live things, you know, the whole point was really to talk about basketball and talk about The Last Dance and shit. And somehow inevitably it got on to, you know, the riots that have been happening and a lot of the shit, and got real serious. And when I was done, because like, you know, we go back through and then drop the audio of these into like midweek feed or whatever, just for an extra fucking thing. And I remember like when I was done, I was like, I can't believe I took it there with Doc, because like he'll fucking own me. I felt really stupid, and like that I didn't make any valid points on anything. Then I had a handful of people reach out to me. They're like, man, you and Doc were like going really well back and forth, had a great rapport, feeding off each other really well. Like it was really good stuff, like in the beginning there. And I was like, oh, it didn't feel like that to me.
No, dude. And I totally get what you're saying. Like, you know, like I said, my newest episode of the podcast with Phil Labonte came out today, and I know exactly where Phil lies, and I know, you know, he's very libertarian, and I tend to be more left of center. And I know me and Doc are more all on the same political line than me and Phil are, but me and Phil do have a lot more political views in common than say me or Doc. Because Doc, you know, I'm very, very avid pro Second Amendment, and I know Doc, like, if you want guns, cool. He's not like, that's not a big prime topic for him.
Right.
Where for me and Phil it is. So, and I always try, like you'll hear in my next episode, I have a episode coming out next week with Danny Case, the co-frontman from Ashes to New.
He said a really ignorant thing on my podcast once.
Oh, I mean, dude, it gets pretty ignorant.
He said that that there weren't really many rap rappers or people doing that in nu metal. And then obviously a couple sites picked up on that, and then people were like, "What the fuck? Have you never heard of a million bands?" No, we actually just had Phil do one of these too, and it's and that was actually going to be something I was going to talk about. So I'll let you say what you're going to say, and then we'll kind of talk about having Phil on, because I think it's a challenge at times to have Phil on in a good way.
Yeah, but it's mainly because Phil is so well, he knows what he's talking about, and some of the shit that he's talking about is a little, I feel like it can be a little shit posty. But when I was, like I said, when I was talking, there's certain times, like I said, especially in my next podcast coming up with Danny, that I felt like I had to just stop the conversation. And because I feel like if you don't explain something to the audience, like we were having a conversation about cuties and I was playing devil's advocate. And now when you get into a conversation like that, if people don't understand that you're playing devil's advocate, they could take you for like, oh, that's how this guy thinks. So I literally stopped the podcast, recorded a little thing like, hey guys, right. I had mentioned it very briefly. You may miss it, but I am playing devil's advocate here, just so you know. So that one does, I'm kind of winced a couple times about, thank God I don't have a massive audience, that's all I gotta say.
So it's kind of funny you bring that up. So I was on, and I don't know if you've seen it, I know he's been advertising on Doc's show, so maybe you've heard of the name, Scott Bowling, Good Company with Bowling. He's got a YouTube show, and basically he's had like Head from Corn. Basically, it's almost like a Wayne's World type S thing, but like literally in the dude's basement. So when I was in Atlanta, he had me come out and he interviewed me for his show. And the guys that film it, Nathan Mowry has done like DDP yoga stuff. He's done stuff for AW, shot most of the last couple Fozzy videos and so forth. So on the up and up. But Scott interviewed me, and then basically through knowing me was like, at the time I'm wearing like my Wu-Tang shirt, and I do a predominantly metal hardcore based podcast, but it's like I love TLC, I love 90s hip hop and R&B. Like I'm not just hardcore metal dude. And more oftentimes than not, I get a lot of people who are like, so do you not really like this scene? Because it seems like even though that's kind of your bread and butter, a lot of times like the way you dress or the things that you're talking about like on your socials are not hardcore metal. And I was like, yeah, but like, I mean, that was a big part of my youth growing up, was like the early 90s, especially growing up out east, was basically being influenced by the kids I was going to school with. Their older brothers, playing like the first Aaliyah record, or, getting into early Biggie and stuff, because like he was not that far away. And so in the interview, though, I was basically talking about like our neighbor who they worked with my dad, and like I was like, I grew up next to a black family, and like the kid was probably 6-7 years older than me. So like at that young brother, older brother kind of level where you're like, I'm 8 and everything this dude does, I'm like, yo, this is dope. I want to be this dude. What didn't matter who it was or what color he was or anything like that. It's just, there was that thing, like everything he does is so cool. And so it, I remember playing NBA Live 95 for the first time, or like I said, him throwing on the first Aaliyah record. The school I went to back east, there was more mix of cultures. When I moved out here to the Midwest, I remember getting called a faggot because I was wearing a Washington Redskins sweatshirt, because that wasn't the team out here in the Midwest. And it was the first time I'd really seen, but it was the first time I'd really seen segregation, or I guess segregation is the right word. Segregation based on
ignorance as well.
Yes, but culturally where you lived. And one of the first things and it got cut out, thankfully, because I was like, I feel a little bit weird about how I kind of said these things. And, I definitely corrected myself and said, people of color in all the appropriate terms now. But, something I was kind of talking about that I thought was kind of weird for me was I was like, growing up out on the East Coast and then moving into the Midwest in the mid 90s was fucking weird. It was a culture shock. One of the first musical things I had ever heard from here in the Midwest was ICP. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like total culture shock. And I remember just being like, what is this? Then fast forward, just to kind of close the chapter on ICP. One of the first tours I'd ever did, real shitty tour. We went to Greenbrier, Tennessee. I get out of the fucking van after driving 12 and a half hours or 15 hours. And this fucking dude with the most thick Southern accent was just like, "Are y'all this band from Michigan?" We're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Y'all like ICP?" And I was like, I didn't just drive 15 hours to have that be the first question that gets asked to me. Like,
where's tell anybody in the middle of nowhere truck stop that you're from Michigan, they'd be like, "Man, y'all friends with ICP?"
So the funnier thing is that, going back to like our conversation about different liquor laws. So I went to the liquor store in the little shopping plaza we were in, and I remember going in and the guy's like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for a 30 rack." And he was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "It's a 30 pack of beer." And he goes, "Where do you get those?" And I was like, "Everywhere."
Everywhere that people sell beer.
So then the guy goes, "Oh, we don't have those, but you can get a 24 and a 6-pack." And I was like, "I can count to 30." That wasn't the problem. I wanted it all.
Like, yo, man, a 30 rack of Coors Light is like $18.99. But if you want me to buy, want me to buy a 20-pack and a 6-pack or whatever, 24-pack and a 6-pack, I was like, that's a lot more than $18.99.
But I just remember that was like a weird thing for me, is like growing up in a completely different area and just being exposed to different shit. And I kind of feel like at times, like especially in the episode that Doc just dropped with his dad, I got a little bit of that again, like where it's like sort of the culture shock of Doc growing up in the East Coast where he did, and then kind of touring for the first time so early and so young. And I feel like that's part of the thing where at times where if maybe we say things that are not PC anymore, it's because like, well, we grew up in a different time period than everybody that is around now, and we're still kind of adopting to new vernacular.
Yeah, and I mean, I touched with this with Eric and Rebecca, and it's just like, you're up where you grew up can dictate some nasty things you might have said when you were growing up, but it's up to you to change it, and not be as ignorant, be it unknowingly at the time. And it's just, if you can move out of where you grew up or, travel. That is
absolutely, when you said that, I was like, yes, because all of my traveling, like when I went, and sorry to cut you off, in my travels of going, at least here in the States and hopefully next year, like over to, if we can go abroad to like Europe or something, is I just feel like I have learned so much about the world we live in just based on traveling and seeing different places and seeing the different kinds of people and where they live and how they live.
Mm-hmm.
That's informed me to be a more understanding person, I think. And I don't see how it can't.
Yeah. Well, see, most of the places that I've been, are they're normal. Like, they're just like the USA. They're a first world country. They have indoor toilets, whatever. But like the only places I've actually ever had culture shock, like it wasn't in Russia. I was shocked to like be surprised, like, oh, like Russia seems pretty fucking normal. But the one place that I went to that I actually got the most culture shock was South America, because especially when you're flying into Santiago in Chile, the airport is about 2 hours away from Santiago, hour and a half, 2 hours. And you're just driving on this freeway. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of the most beautiful, lush green mountains you'll ever see in your life. And apparently the southern tip of Chile is amazing to go skiing and snowboarding in. But when you're driving from Santiago International Airport to Santiago, there's literally shanty towns like in the medians of the freeway, on the side of the freeway, like houses that literally look like they were put together with plywood and tarps. And that's when you kind of see like, oh, because South America isn't really a first world country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of hunger, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of shit that they don't have access to because they're a poorer country. But just seeing where, a lot of the population lives in South America, compared to their major cities, which is where most people go to, that's been the only culture shock, and how a lot of those people are still like fairly happy. They're not like, too I mean, I'm sure they're probably bummed, but I mean, they're not like, they're not like our homeless people,
Right. Yeah, that was like a big shock for me going out to Portland the first time or the only time at this point, but like just seeing the just massive amounts of homeless that are just like on the streets and no one cares.
Oh yeah, dude, like downtown Portland is like
yeah,
so sketchy at nighttime. And I mean, no, don't get me wrong, I love Portland. I love the Pacific Northwest, but like there's some spots in Seattle that are like that too, like up in Capitol Hill. And I mean, fuck, I haven't been up there since all this crazy like Chaz shit was going on, but it's definitely it's really fucking weird. And a lot of those people, like, that's how they want to live. So it doesn't matter. Like, you could literally give them $1 million and they'd be like, oh, I don't give a shit. I want to live off the grid.
Yeah. It's funny as you said that. It reminded me of I'd probably have the guitar company mix, but I think it was Martin. Maybe it was Taylor. Had a video of Tim Armstrong playing his signature acoustic. Mm-hmm. But he's basically busking, sitting on the outside of some place just with his case open, playing this like really expensive ass guitar. And I was like, kind of conflicting ideas. Like, yes, he's a punk rock icon, and it looks like, he still looks very homeless with that giant ass beard of his and shit. But then it's like, yeah, but he's got like a very expensive guitar.
Well, I mean, they did something similar in the New York City subway where they had like that world-renowned violinist playing a fucking Stradivarius with the fucking violin case open. And for those of you who don't know what a Stradivarius violin is there's not very many of them. They're handmade and they're worth over $1 million. A violin.
Something that was kind of interesting, that I wanted to ask you about talking to Phil, because like, I know we went 2.5 hours with Phil on this a couple weeks ago, and we're going to probably post.
Oh, that's super easy. That's super easy to do with Phil.
But the thing that's sort of interesting about it, though, is like, I feel like half the time I didn't know how we ended up where we did. Like, he would be talking, and I'm like, wait, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, I would try to go back because it would be like, let's try not to make it political. Let's try just to kind of have a fun conversation about a handful of things.
Yeah.
Like, about him doing Twitch streaming and so forth. And then the next thing I know, like, we're talking about gun rights and so forth. I'm like, how the fuck did we get here from Twitch?
I mean, you'd be surprised. And like, I'm not sure if you've listened to the episode that I dropped.
I'll listen to it tomorrow.
Yeah. Like, we didn't start out talking about guns. Like, that's like over halfway through. Like, we're talking about like, we're like talking about trying to get rid of Facebook and fucking, whatever. And a bunch of different stuff before that even like hits the ground. We're like making fun of Alex Jones and shit like that, So, I mean, the subject of Alex Jones in itself could be, political or whatever. But, we were just I was talking about how I couldn't find the video of him on InfoWars.
About Phil on InfoWars?
Yeah, I was looking for the video of him on InfoWars, and they basically scrubbed that from the nicer parts of the internet.
So it's weird that like that's apparently going on now with Joe Rogan. It seems like, at least on Spotify.
No, I don't know if that's going on with him on Spotify. I know he misspoke about some things happening in Portland, and then like the Spotify execs were like, "Oh, we got to listen to these podcasts before they go out" or something. But I'm not exactly sure because
I've heard like episodes, like some of the more provocative episodes are just gone. They're not on Spotify.
Oh yeah. So I know the Alex Jones ones aren't on there. I know the Gavin McInnes episodes aren't on there. Which in reality, fuck Gavin McInnes. And I know there's a couple more controversial ones out that aren't on there as well. But I mean, you have to remember, I think they have until December 1st. Because I think that's when Joe Rogan becomes exclusive to Spotify. So that's probably, I don't even know. They might even take him off YouTube. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I know that'll be taken off every other. You won't find him on Apple Podcasts anymore. You won't find him anywhere else besides. I mean, Spotify. Why else? Why else would they be like, here's $100 million? And he doesn't even have sponsors anymore. He's just like, I got this much money now. I don't need sponsors for the podcast anymore.
Yeah, I I listened to him in the beginning, like when it was like him, Marin, Kevin Smith, and Chris Hardwick were my like first couple of podcasts I started listening to religiously. And then Rogan just got to be so overwhelming with the amount of time it would take to get through an episode. Where I was like, maybe I needed to dedicate like a day. But then he started dropping multiple episodes a week that are like 3 hours long, and you're like, I don't got that kind of time, dude.
Well, I know like the first episode he did for Spotify was with Duncan Trussell, and that was 5.5 hours long. It took me a week to listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets a little bit rough. I do want to ask you a weird question, and if you don't want to answer this, it's totally fine. It's just something the curious person in me wants to know. So obviously during this COVID time, as in the Bad Wolves camp, you guys launched a Patreon, which I think is interesting. Obviously bands like Process the Hero and shit have been kind of doing similar things to release albums, release exclusive content. Bands are doing live streams and so forth, but it seems like you guys are constantly in the news, the music news, for the covers you're releasing on Patreon. And the thing that's been interesting about it to me is it seems like it has garnered so much negativity thrown at you guys. And it has made me wonder if like you guys I'm sure you don't pay attention to it, but it is one of those things where it just kind of makes me wonder in light of like, touring with Nickelback, touring with Five Finger, like bands that are quote unquote the most hated bands in metal or rock or so on and so forth. If some of these things, if they have kind of taught you how to kind of traverse some of this shit that you guys are getting as a result of some of the things you're doing now.
Well, first of all, I like the one thing that I take away from listening to Joe Rogan for as long as I have is don't read the comments, because when I do, I do get upset, and I have responded to people that they might not understand, and maybe they're attacking us. Like with the covers, I get people are upset because we haven't made them available publicly.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, because
okay.
But I mean, I'm getting to the point. We haven't made them available publicly, only on the Patreon. People are like, well, I can't afford $10 a month, and that's fine. I understand that you can't afford $10 a month, and then they'll be like, "You're just another fucking cover band," or "You're just like you're a cover. You've made your career fucking stealing other people's music." And I'm like, first of all, bud, my response is always, we have 2 albums. One of those songs on those 2 albums is a cover. The rest of that material is all 100% original. We have 5 going on 6 number one rock
singles,
hits.
yeah.
And 4 of those, 4 going on 5 of those is original material. So you might not like how we're doing our business, but I mean, for the price of a pack of smokes a month, cigarettes are about $10 a month. Yeah, for the price of because they're about 10 smokes are about $10 a pack here. For the price of a pack of smokes a month, which is far less than any admission ticket. Like if you were going to concerts every single month, for $10 a month, you get anywhere from 2 to 4 exclusive songs, which they could be B-sides, rarities, covers. They've been covers lately because we're working on our 3rd record, and it's just, unfortunately, doing covers the way that we do it is a lot easier than coming up with new specific material just for the Patreon. But we also have, like I said, B-sides and rarities. Me, Doc, and Chris are on there. I'm on there on Monday. Chris is on there on Wednesday. Doc's on there on Thursday doing, live Q&As. We're jamming. We're on there for sometimes I'm on there for 2 hours, man, 2.5 hours. So it's like, it's really, and it's like, we have our own like Bad Wolves Patreon fan page that was created by some of the Patreon fans. And it's like a little group, like family. And it's like, so it's not only are you getting exclusive merch, songs, experiences, Q&As, but it's like, you're kind of like becoming part of this like secondary family. Because I mean, dude, a lot of not just a lot of these people have gone through problems like hardships during COVID and stuff like that. And I have never seen a larger support system for other people. Like, it's always positive. Like, I've seen like, oh, my brother committed suicide, and I've all these comments where they're just like, hey, text me, call me, like, I got you. Like, it's becoming kind of like just like like I said, like a family. And regardless if you appreciate the way that we do our business, unfortunately, we can't. There's a lot of red tape when you release covers. And honestly, with releasing them publicly like that,
red flags.
Yeah, it wouldn't bring in the amount of income for the band itself. That's not even like for us individually as band members. Like, we got to a certain point to where the machine needs to stay well oiled. We don't want to disappear into obscurity. We still have budgets regardless. We still have people that work for us regardless if we're touring or not.
Right.
So we need to make sure that, we as a band do get a little bit of cash in our pocket, but it's not as much as people would definitely think. And it's definitely not as much as what we would be making if we were able to tour and sell our merch. Like, dude, it's not even half.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like we're sitting here being greedy. Bitches, give me your money. I mean, we're just trying to keep afloat, but also have a platform where we can engage more personally with our fans. And I get it. Some people do feel excluded because they can't afford it. And like, it doesn't make you any less of a fan if you can't afford $10 a month. And it's like, you don't have to buy like 6 months at a time. Like, you can buy a month. Excuse me. Like, you can go get a Big Mac meal for the same. You can get 1 month of Bad Wolves Patreon. Check it out. See if you like it. And if it's not something you're into, like, I'm only going to say this. I don't know how many people are watching this right now, but people are like bitching like, oh, I can't download the songs. Like, you do know how to capture audio from a computer, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want these songs, it ain't that hard to figure out. Pay your $10. And there's like fucking 20 songs up there right now. So, people are going to hate. And honestly, when it comes to this shit with like the Nickelback and Five Finger Death Punch, like, I'm really good friends with Mike Kruger, the bass player for Nickelback. He's one of my, we check in, call each other all the time. I lived with him for a week when I was going through a really bad breakup last year. And I mean, I look at dudes like Mike and dudes like Zoltan and, Chris, and you know what? If they're gonna compare us to Five Finger Death Punch, bring on the hate, because I mean, I have really not seen more successful, happy, generous, and just all around like defeating odds of being in a heavier band, and being able to not only make a living off of it, make a good living off of it. So honestly, the one thing that I have taken from talking to Zoltan about, about how he deals with the hate, he's like, I laugh, because for every one person that hates us, there's 10,000 more that love us. So the more we're hated, the more we're loved. And I mean, dude, those guys, Nickelback has sold like fucking 70 million records.
People are lying.
Motherfuckers is lying. You know what I mean?
Just remember,
Mike Kruger lives in Bela Lugosi's old mansion in the Hollywood Hills. Do you think he's fucking crying because someone says that they don't like Nickelback? No, he ain't.
It's like, I remember I've only seen Five Finger once, and it was at a casino gig, those ones that just pay straight fucking paper. Mm-hmm. But I remember, like, they aren't necessarily the thing for me, but I respect the hell out, like, especially after the Hired Guns documentary came out. Like, I've always respected everyone in the band for, like, Zoltan is the quintessential American dream, honestly. That motherfucker, like, if you want to know, what was that?
Immigrant too.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you want to talk about like the immigrant story, coming to America with $5 in your pocket and making something of yourself. Like, that motherfucker is the epitome of that story. You look at
McLaren, dog.
I mean, you look at like Ivan, like the dude who has gone through a ton of shit publicly, has come on the other side, and I mean, he has the Phoenix tattoo on his fucking face. Granted, I'll announce this shit. We're working on a
Oh,
sponsorship with Moody's Medicinals, but I gotta work on that shit. But it's a thing where all those bands. I mean, I remember turning around, like we were leaving early to go back home because we had a like 3-hour drive from the casino gig, and I remember just turning around and looking at probably 10,000 people absolutely engrossed in what was happening while Five Finger was playing, and I was like,
it's a good
may not be my thing, but I can't knock it because proof is in the pudding. It's right here.
dude. That's it. It's a good show, regardless if you like the music or not. You'll definitely be entertained. Like if like if your girlfriend or whatever likes Five Finger Death Punch, like just let her drag you to a
Yeah.
show. It's like all the pyro and lasers and fucking homie goes up on this fucking platform that goes like 40 feet in the air doing a fucking guitar solo, and there's lasers shooting everywhere. Like you'll be fucking entertained at least,
Do you want to know the show? And I know I think I've talked about this once or twice on the podcast, but the show that really changed my mind on a lot of that kind of shit was for a little bit there. I was doing local reviews of shows here in town, and I always got tagged like the metal hardcore dude. So like I never got to go review the shows I wanted to. So I remember my wife and I went to go see Janet Jackson. And lo and behold, they couldn't get a free ticket for their writer. And then the publicist hits me up and he's like, "Hey, can you write a review for this show?" And I was like, "Sure." And I remember like jotting my notes down, and I was like, the band was literally in the shadows on the stage. Like, they're playing Black Cat, sick guitar riff, band's fucking locked in. Reminds me of like all the Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam stuff of like like I said, the early 90s and so forth. And I was just fucking like so bummed that like the things that I thought were important weren't being presented. And obviously Janet's lip syncing and shit like that. And I remember my wife just kind of grabbed my hand as I was typing something in my phone, a note, and she just goes, "Look around. People don't give a fuck about any of the things you're writing. People are here to have a good fucking time. Look at this couple in front of us. Like, they're dressed to the fucking tens. They're showing out. They're dancing. They're remembering like probably when they were in like senior year of high school or some shit. Like for some of people, like they're having a good fucking time. And it doesn't matter that the musicians aren't on display. It doesn't matter that she's lip syncing. She's providing the show that everyone wants."
Yeah, I mean, like when you get to that level, when you're in arena band, like, I won't say that the music comes second, but when you get to that point in your career,
it has to be a show.
You are now an entertainer.
Yeah.
You're not fucking between the buried and me standing there playing your records exactly how they're meant to be heard or whatever. Like you're there for the fire, the lights, the fucking lasers. Like I said, homie doing guitar solo 40 feet up in the fucking air. Like that's what you're there for. You're there for the show. And honestly, it doesn't matter. Like in 20 years, there could be a fucking fake Kiss band literally playing along to Kiss tracks, not even plugged in, no real gear. They're just pantomiming. I mean, and as long as there's a good show there, people won't give a shit because that's what they want to see is they want to see the show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was a really big reminder for me that it's sometimes I need to, as the like staunch musician, whatever, that I need to let go of that sometimes. And I need to just enjoy what's being presented to me. And because that's how probably 99% of the fucking audience is looking at it.
Yeah.
And once she kind of said that, it's definitely unlocked a lot more of taking in shows and watching everyone have a good time. Like, unfortunately, between booking shows, writing about show reviews where I want to try to make someone feel like they were there and also doing service to the people who were there, it's ruined shows for me. Like, I can't walk into a show without thinking, okay, so what maybe is the guarantee? What is everyone making? And okay, the bands probably are losing 20%, 25% off their merch sales. This band's not doing so hot, so that's probably not very good for them. Just things like that, breaking down the numbers and the finances. And it sometimes that's the unfortunate thing for me is I take myself out of those shows. So when she kind of did that, it kind of allowed me to get back into just being a fan of being at the spectacle, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. No, dude, I totally get that. Like I wouldn't go to shows when I wasn't on tour for the longest time because I'd be like going in, I'd be like, oh fuck, I know exactly what's going on. Like, oh, and I'm gonna bug them. They got to go do their meet and greet. But like now, like if I'm lucky enough to get invited by one of my friends to one of their shows that they're playing locally, like I kind of like, they don't really care if I'm there to watch the show. Like they just want to hang.
Yeah.
So I'm like there, and I try to, bring them whatever they may need, or,
Absolutely.
try to not be in the way and try not to drink all their rider beer.
One of my, like, and that's something we've kind of talked about on the show is like, I have a lot of friends. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I don't think, maybe Doc did. A friend of mine is doing the For the Nomads thing. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh yeah.
Did you guys?
I think one of my microphones is up there.
Okay. So then you've already done it, so I won't bother you to do it again. But like a friend of mine, Frank, he was actually supposed to be on that tour you guys were going to do within this moment, with Andy or Black Veil Brides. But he, like, there are times like where I've gone, like, one of my favorite stories to tell is like I went out to Detroit, which is like 2.5 hours away from here, and just to go hang out with him. He was on tour with Pennywise and Rancid, and when I got there, I had an all access pass and shit, and I hung out in the lobby with him while he was doing merch, watching a Yankees game. And I was like, and people were like, so did you watch any of the show? And I was like, nope. I think I maybe poked my head in during Rancid set just to be like, I saw him.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, no, I was there to hang out with my friend. And like, people don't seem to understand that it's like, if you're friends with someone, sometimes I feel like the friendships I've made with people that are in touring bands are actually more meaningful to me than some of the friends I have, because I feel like there's nothing to gain from either one of us. Like they have nothing to gain from me, and I really have nothing to gain from them, especially only getting to hang out with some people for 20 minutes at a time. But I know that they are some of the most genuine, real, down to earth people I've ever fucking met. And it's one of those things where, of course, I would drive 2.5 hours to go hang out with my friend for 3 hours. And, go into work the next day dog ass tired because I had a good time hanging with my friend.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it kind of makes me go, well, why wouldn't you go do that? Like, why wouldn't you do that? If you have a friend, why wouldn't you go do these things for them? And I've kind of started to learn to put it back on the other people where I'm like, well, why wouldn't you go hang out with a friend if they were in town for like a day? Like if you knew you weren't going to see them for 6 more months, like, wouldn't you go hang out with them?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you try?
Yeah.
And I just feel like that kind of speaks more volumes to the people that, I guess indirectly you interact with, where they're like, no, I guess I wouldn't. And it's like, well, I guess you're kind of a shitty friend. But kind of wrapping this up, because we've almost gone Rogan-esque with this.
We're almost at 2 hours here.
Yeah. Obviously, you just put out the new episode with Phil. You talked about how you have the new episode coming up next week with the Danny from Matches to New.
Yeah, new episodes every Wednesday at 5 a.m. PST.
What that's really. Thankfully, I know you have it scheduled to just drop. I know you're not releasing them at that point on your own.
No, yeah, they're all scheduled. Like I have my next 4 episodes scheduled. I do it so early, mainly because I have a friend who works a really early shift. And he's always just like, I'm driving for work at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and your podcast isn't on. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll do it early just for you, Brad.
What I asked Doc this toward the end of our Facebook Live thing. Who are some of your guests that you want to get on? Just even if it's not to do an interview per se, but just to bullshit. Who are some of your bucket list people that you want to get on the show?
I mean, I haven't really thought about this too much, because I think when I was doing the podcast before, I was so enamored with like, who can I get? I think at the time, I think the biggest person I had on my last podcast was probably, Mark Holcomb from Periphery, and they had just like finished. This was in 2016, so I think they had just finished doing stuff for Periphery 3, maybe.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So with that, they were super popular at that point, and that episode had the most listens I think I'd ever got on fucking anything. I had like 17,000 listeners on that, and that was just off of SoundCloud. That's not even counting Apple.
Yeah.
But now as I'm getting into it, like honestly, just having guests line up, I don't fucking really care who they are. As long as, it's a good conversation and they share. That's pretty much it, because I'm not trying to like get the biggest and the best. You know, I had Phil on, who is a big name. But I had him on to talk about something that I care about a lot, and I know that he would be able to talk about it better than I would be, because he is much smarter in that field than I. So I'm also not afraid to have people who are smarter than me come on my show, talk about shit that I don't really know about, school me completely. And like, I'm not afraid of it. So it's like, I don't care. Right now, I'm in talks with one of my mutual friends to get Jeremy Cordell on the show, which, if you don't know who Jeremy Cordell is, he did the Bob Lazar Area 51 and Flying Saucers documentary.
Okay.
I'm trying to get him on. That would be a really, really, really big one for me, mainly just because of his following. But I don't really care. Like, I basically, I had told the person who I know that I'm like, dude, he doesn't even have to fucking advertise. Like, he doesn't have to advertise if he doesn't want to. I'm not trying to get listeners out. I just want to talk to him about UFOs and aliens and Bob Lazar. And I was like, he can give me a list of shit that we can't talk about, and that's perfectly fine. Like, I'm trying to cater to make it so he is more comfortable with coming on my show than just be like, all right, who the fuck is this Joe Schmo or whatever. So, I mean, I'm working on that right now. And honestly, anybody who is like, I'm trying to branch out of the music scene to try to get maybe more different types of artists, or vloggers or YouTubers. I've reached out to a few YouTubers. I'm still waiting to get a response. But basically just anybody. I don't really care. I'm not discriminatory.
I've definitely enjoyed what you've done so far.
Thank you.
I think it's actually, I mean, no offense, I think it's better than what you were doing. I think it's more interesting, personally.
I also sucked more at speaking then too.
Well, I guess
my first podcast with Doc was the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life. I'm kind of glad that fucking Tour Bus Confidential got scrubbed from the internet. Jesus.
You know, that was actually something I talked about on Scott's thing, because I was on the Good Company with Bowling interview I did, where I was like, I kind of like keeping them up, because sometimes I'll go back and listen to them and be like, oh, fuck, I didn't know, how to just, I mean, if I told you the way I used to record, like, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like, that's some
my way was fucking, I had this mixer going everywhere, and
I didn't even have that. Literally, I had a Blue Yeti microphone, and the very first episode I did was literally in person with a friend of mine, like, so that was fine. But a lot of them that I was doing from there on, like, where the person obviously is not in the room with me, I had my iPad and a Blue Yeti microphone, and I would put it on speaker. And I was
Jesus.
And now that you know that, if you were to go back and listen, you might be like, it does not sound like that.
Yeah, I was fortunate. Like, my first podcast was funded by my cousin, who owns the Fantasy Football Guys and does the Fantasy Football Guys. And like, he bought me this mixer and these like $30 Shure microphones. And actually, I'm not gonna lie, my $38 Shure microphones. So if you listen to my podcast that I did with Eric and Travis, I'm not using Shure SM7s. I'm using Shure $38 microphones to do those podcasts, and they sound great.
These are my microphones that I would take with me. If you listen to some of the ones I did with Doc in person, these are the Amazon specials for like $20. Gets you the arm, the cables, all the shit.
Yeah,
pretty fucking solid.
I mean, dude, I don't know exactly the audio difference between the ones I do from home or the ones that I did in person with Travis. But I mean, dude, you don't need much. You don't need much. You can get an interface for like $70, $80 and a fucking couple $38 fucking microphones. And dude, Audacity is free.
I've always said, and this is how I started the podcast, and I think anyone who wants to start it should follow this advice. Don't let the lack of technology or what you can afford hinder you from creating something that you will enjoy doing.
Yeah.
That'll come down the road. Like, I have a fucking $500 mixer right next to me. I have a $500 microphone that we're both using. Like, dude, eventually you'll get
interface.
There.
The interface that's going from my microphone to my laptop is like $400 microphone, $700 fucking input. Oh, but I also have a $400 fucking Neve transformer. going into a $5,000 MacBook Pro. You know what I mean?
So
but you don't need that shit.
No, I mean the funny thing is like for whatever reason, my like Zoom, L8 whatever won't fucking go into my laptop. So I'm using my like $80 Behringer like 4 interface like mixing board like thing.
Dude, Behringer, honestly, actually, I was talking about this with somebody else. So Behringer makes these knockoff pedals.
I have one. I have a TU2, but it's like the TU whatever.
All right, so any of the pedals that Behringer makes that are ripoffs of analog products are literally the exact thing that you're going to get because it's digital components that are much harder to duplicate. Or I'm sorry, it might be the other way around. All I know is that the Sansamp bass driver DI and the Behringer version of that are literally the exact same fucking thing. Same with like I think it's the analog it can't replicate, but if it's a digital pedal, that's what it is. If it's a digital signal, it can replicate it basically exactly the same for $30 as opposed of like fucking 300.
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny getting into all this, and then you just start buying shit, and you're like, "Do I need all this?" Like, I kind of liked it better when it was like a USB microphone, and then I was just more focused on the content or doing what I was doing versus like having all of this pro shit. But after a while, I mean, it's like anything. Like, I mean, I suck as a musician, but it's like I have, I just bought like 3 new guitars. I just bought an EVH, like my first EVH. Like I have a real head. I just bought that EL34 that they've been putting
the
out.
Stealth. Yeah, it's great.
Have one of those. Bought a Mesa like 4x12 slanted cab, and it's like I'll never need any of that shit for just me playing in this room I'm in currently. But I wanted it, so yeah, I bought it.
I mean, dude. Yeah, dude. Like, and that's one thing I'm kind of learning as because I've started dipping into the YouTube stuff as well as, I'm like, lighting is more important. Don't worry about your fucking camera. Like, then if there's going to be one thing that you buy for your camera, it's either going to be a new lens or a different way to light. And it's because I'm like trying to do it as cheap as possible. Like most of my YouTubes are edited in iMovie. And like the camera I bought was used for $500. It's not the best camera, but you know what? It does me pretty fucking well. It's a 1080p. It's 60 frames per second. It does what it needs to do. And I'm like, I'm looking at all these, like the Sony A7 III, and I'm just like, why do I don't need to do that. The gear comes along. Just get good at the craft. It's like the reason why I have fucking over $1,000 that I input my guitars to is because, I mean, that's what I'm recording with. I'm literally recording Bad Wolves bass tracks that are going on the actual album in this seat. So it's like I need to have good quality stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's just I'm just sending DI, but the quality of the DI is what needs to be like tip-top shape. And the interface and the DI that I'm using are the same that our producers are using. So I'm just like, all right, that makes sense for me to have those. But I've been playing for 20 years. So don't worry about having, shitty gear to start out with. Like, dude, I'm writing a fucking synthwave album on this.
Tight.
And dude, I have a big keyboard. I have a fucking 49 key fucking Native Instruments. Hate it. I'm gonna sell it because I like my little baby keyboard better.
I almost feel like I need to hook you up with if you're not friends with him already, Andrew from the Ghost Inside, because he's big on synthwave shit. Like he turned me on to a couple of different acts.
We have a few mutual friends in common, and I know that my guitar player Chris is really good friends. Yeah, him and Zach are really good friends. So yeah, I don't know if I've met Chris. I've met Zach. And I know
I should hook you guys up so you could do an interview or do a podcast with Andrew, because like he just sits at home all day, so like he would have time. But like I feel like you guys would have a fucking blast just bullshitting.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd be down with that. Feel free to set that up if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll do that. And where can I know we're on technically a form of social media, but where can people find you, the podcast, or whatever you would like to plug?
All right, so don't fucking add me on Facebook, all right? There's too many of you motherfuckers as it is. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram.
I've been surprised you've been using it a little bit more recently.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back in the whole Twitter thing, you know what I mean?
It's a good time.
It's because I can scream things into the ether and I don't get my mom's fucking cousin's uncle's brother's best friend fucking telling me what a fucking lib pansy I am. You know what I mean?
I've always said Twitter is where you're going to get real people's opinions on things because most people aren't following them on it. So you're going to get a more honest look into someone's life.
Exactly. So, all right. So Instagram and Twitter is the same. It's KS Konkiel, KSKONKIEL. You can visit my merch store, even though I'm not selling t-shirts anymore. I'm still selling autograph pictures and guitar picks. I have 12 designs of guitar picks on my website. It is kylekonkiel.bigcartel.com. And you can look up my my podcast, which is just STFU, which is short for just shut the fuck up. Anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and bullshitting for over 2 hours. Definitely feel better about this one than the 10-minute press junket you did at Sonic Temple a couple years ago. Where
yeah, no worries. I'm sorry. And by the way, me and Jonathan here share a birthday where we're going to do a birthday podcast, but I didn't see his message until like the day of.
Yeah.
So
let's plan on, how about this for shits and giggles? I'll set a calendar reminder, whatever. Let's do a birthday podcast next year.
I'm going to be drunk as fuck too, by the way.
Sure. I mean, do you know what our podcast is based on?
Nah, but I'm going to be drunk anyway.
Drinking. That's why, brutally speaking, BREW. Yeah. So we can do a drunk cast, and maybe we can.
Idea, I'm down.
Maybe we can figure out. We have over a year to plan. Maybe we can figure out some kind of a charity where we can raise money for a charity of your choosing or something.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, we can figure all that shit out. We got plenty of time to do it.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening, and
thanks, man. You too. Thanks for having me on here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll probably talk soon.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Have a good one.
All right.